Alex, there's a specific kind of silence in a shop that only happens right after you hear a tink. It's not a loud noise, it's a delicate crystalline sound like a wine glass breaking in another room. But when you're working with cast iron, that little tink is the sound of your weekend evaporating.
That sounds suspiciously specific. Is that the manifold from the 1940s Ford tractor you've been restoring for 3 years? Or did you finally break your favorite frying pan?
It's the manifold. And for the record, it's a delicate surgical procedure, not a restoration. Cast iron is the cranky old man of the metal world. It's got 10 times the carbon of mild steel, anywhere from 2 to 4%. All that carbon lives in there as little flakes of graphite, which makes it great for absorbing vibration, but it also makes it about as flexible as a frozen cracker.
So basically, it's metal that forgot how to be metal and decided to become ceramic instead?
Exactly. It's brittle. If you hit it with a torch too fast or let it cool down while a breeze is blowing through the shop, it just gives up on life. It cracks because the weld shrinks faster than the surrounding metal can handle. It's a high-stakes game of thermal tug-of-war where the cast iron always loses.
I feel like every time we talk about problem metals, your solution is usually don't do it. But people obviously weld this stuff. I've seen repairs that look like they've held since the Eisenhower administration. So, what's the secret? Are we preheating it until the shop feels like the surface of the sun?
That's one way. You've got two schools of thought, and they're like two different religions. You either keep it hot or you keep it cool. But whatever you do, you can't switch sides halfway through. If you start hot and let it get lukewarm, you're asking for heartbreak.
Okay, let's start with the surface of the sun method. If I'm going to preheat, what am I looking at? Because I don't think my kitchen oven is going to appreciate a greasy engine block next to the tater tots.
No, definitely keep the cast iron out of the kitchen. You're looking at a range between 500 and 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. The magic number you want to avoid is 1450. That's the critical zone where things start getting weird on a molecular level and you basically ruin the tempering. You want to heat the whole part slowly and uniformly. If you just blast one spot with a rosebud torch, you're just creating a new crack 6 inches away.
And once you've got it glowing like a campfire coal, what are you actually sticking into it? I assume standard 7018 stick electrodes are a no-go?
You can use steel rods like Lincoln Ferroweld if you don't care about ever machining that part again, and you want the weld to rust at the same rate as the rest of the casting. But usually, if you want a repair that actually behaves, you reach for the expensive stuff. Nickel. Tech Rod 99 is the gold standard for single pass stuff because it's 99% nickel. If you're doing a heavy buildup, you use Tech Rod 55, which is a nickel iron blend.
Nickel? That sounds like a fast way to turn a $20 repair into a $100 hobby.
It is. A handful of those rods cost more than a decent steak dinner. But nickel is ductile. It stretches while the cast iron stays stiff. It's the peacekeeper in the relationship.
I noticed you're not just jumping in there. You're grinding a massive canyon into that crack. Is that just for fun, or is there a reason we're removing half the metal?
You've got to get deep. If you just smear a weld on top, it's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg. You want to V out the crack, and honestly, cleaning is the part everyone skips. Cast iron is porous. It's like a sponge for 50 years of oil, grease, and mystery fluids. If you don't grind back to bright, clean metal, your weld is going to look like carbonated soda. Just bubbles and disappointment.
Okay, so we've cleaned it, we've V'd it out, and we've roasted it in the preheat. Now you start welding. Do you just run a 6-inch bead and call it a day?
Absolutely not. That's how you hear the tink. You do short runs, maybe an inch at a time, and then, while the weld is still red, you take a ball peen hammer and you lightly tap the weld bead. It's called peening.
Wait, you're hitting the weld with a hammer while it's hot? Isn't that the opposite of being gentle with brittle metal?
It feels wrong, doesn't it? But you're actually mechanically stretching the weld metal. As the weld cools, it wants to shrink and pull the cast iron apart. By hitting it, you're flattening the bead out and relieving that tension. You're basically telling the weld, stay put, don't pull.
That sounds incredibly tedious. What happens if I don't have a giant industrial oven or a way to keep a 300-pound engine block at 900 degrees? You mentioned a cold method?
The cold method. It's a bit of a misnomer. It should be called the barely warm method. You keep the casting at about 100 degrees, basically just warm to the touch. You lay down a tiny weld, maybe half an inch, and then you stop. You wait until you can put your bare hand on the metal comfortably before you start the next bead.
So, a 10-minute weld job takes 4 hours?
If you're lucky. I once repaired a cracked housing on a wood splitter using the cold method. I'd do one stitch, go inside, have a cup of coffee, watch the news, come back out, do another stitch. If you get impatient and try to just finish it up, the heat builds up, the stress accumulates, and tink, you're back to square one, but now with a ruined piece of nickel in the way.
It sounds like welding cast iron is 10% skill and 90% psychological warfare against your own impatience.
You're not wrong, and the cooling process is the final boss. When you're done with the preheat method, you don't just put the torch down and walk away. You bury that part. I keep a bucket of dry sand just for this. You drop the hot part in the sand, cover it up, and leave it until tomorrow. Or you wrap it in a heavy insulating blanket. You want that heat to bleed out as slowly as humanly possible.
Like a slow cooker for metal.
Exactly. If the air hits it too fast, the outside shrinks faster than the inside, and you're right back in Crackville, population U.
So, what about other problem metals? Everyone talks about cast iron, but what about the stuff people find in their garages that looks like metal, but acts like a nightmare? Like pot metal or that weird magnesium alloy you see on old chainsaws?
Oh man, pot metal or zinc die-cast is the devil's work. It has a melting point so low that by the time you see it start to get shiny, it's already a puddle on the floor. Most of the time, I tell people to reach for the specialized brazing rods for that. Don't even try to weld it in the traditional sense.
And for the DIYer who's listening to this and thinking, I have a MIG welder and a dream, is cast iron even an option? Or is this strictly a stick welding game?
You can MIG it, but you need the right wire. You can get flux cord wire specifically for cast iron, or use a high nickel MIG wire, but it's finicky. The shielded metal arc, good old stick welding, is usually the best bet because the flux helps manage the impurities and the nickel rods are more readily available for a one-off repair. TIG is great for precision, but it puts a lot of concentrated heat in one spot, which can be risky if you aren't a master of heat control.
It sounds like the takeaway here is that cast iron isn't impossible, it's just demanding. It requires a level of respect that mild steel just doesn't ask for.
That's the perfect way to put it. Mild steel is a golden retriever. It's happy to see you, it's very forgiving, and it'll try to work with you even if you're doing a bad job. Cast iron is a Himalayan cat. It has very specific requirements, it doesn't care about your feelings, and if you don't follow the rules, it will leave you.
Well, I think I'll stick to my golden retriever projects for now. But next time I hear a tink in the shop, I'll know exactly who to call to help me bury a tractor part in a sandbox.
Just make sure you bring the good coffee. We're going to be waiting a while for it to cool down. The big lesson today, folks, whether you're keeping it hot or keeping it cool, consistency is your only friend when the carbon is high. Don't rush the prep, don't skimp on the nickel, and for heaven's sake, keep the hammer handy for peening.
And maybe just buy a new frying pan if it's Lodge. It's cheaper than the nickel rods.
Fair point. See you next time in the den.